And Christ said unto them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath.
There are numerous scriptures. First of all is we should look at the silence of the New Testament. Nowhere are we told that that specific commandment, the fourth commandment, has been set aside. Secondly, we find Jesus Christ himself setting an example for us. He kept the Sabbath. So does this say anything to us, those who claim to be followers of his? And then finally, you see references to the apostles in the apostolic church, even to the Gentile converts who heard Paul preach, coming out on the Sabbath to the synagogues and hearing him preach. And he would say, and they would say, at least on one occasion, they said, we would like to hear you the next Sabbath on these things. And then we see right there in the book of Acts, the next Sabbath, the whole city came out to hear the Apostle Paul preach. I would say that rather than looking at those first day scriptures, the ones that mention the first day of the week, and seeing a pattern there, I would look at the pattern of the Sabbath being observed by those earliest Christians as apostolic, as the apostolic custom and the apostolic practice of that day.
And the New Testament writer of the book of Hebrews conclusively states, There remaineth therefore a rest, or keeping of the Sabbath, to the people of God.
Okay, so Bronson, we've been discussing a few of these influences that have misdirected that early New Testament church in a few areas. One, the misconceptions surrounding the immortality of the soul, which led to a lot of misunderstanding concerning the reward of the saved and the punishment or eternal punishing of the wicked. We've also covered a little bit about how the Greco-Roman society and culture, especially the religious movements within that society and culture, literally was kind of well designed and suited for essentially counterfeiting those very simple teachings and liturgy of Jesus Christ, and then ultimately hijacking, of all things, the whole religion in some respects. And then, of course, we just heard and read, believe it or not, literal statements from actual Catholic priests who claim that unless you are one who concedes to Catholic tradition, that for all intents and purposes, and or don't concede to the Pope and the leadership of the Catholic Church, well, then you should still be keeping a Saturday Sabbath, which is, you know, in some respects kind of unbelievable. But putting all that to the side, we still have a little bit more time left. Give me another example of one more of these influences that misdirected that early New Testament church.
Sure, Bill. How about Easter? Consider it. The fact that Jesus Christ was a Passover observing Jew, and in addition to him being an observant Jew, the Bible describes him as our Passover. And finally, we also find Paul encouraging the New Testament church to keep the feast of Passover and the days of unleavened bread.
The Apostle Paul states, Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened, for even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
The change from Passover to Easter is an unfortunate story. Specifically, because by substituting many of the fertility and sun-worshiping symbols and rites of the Greco-Roman religion, it instituted changes. This resulted in disconnecting with many of the deep, rich meanings captured in the typology of the Passover event and the connection with how Jesus Christ became our Passover. So much truth has been hidden over the centuries. Buried in the recorded chronicles of Roman church councils that instituted misdirected legislation, initiated by a variety of alleged church fathers, who allowed themselves to become compromised by the surrounding pagan sun-worshiping culture of Greco-Rome.
The celebration we understand to be Easter has a very long history of development. Certainly it does precede, at least aspects of it, precede the Christian era. For example, the name Easter itself, even though there are many sources today that would tend to dispute the older sources, but all of the older sources clearly connected the word Easter with a pagan goddess named Astarte, also known as Ishtar, and other similar names. This was a pagan fertility goddess. So it would seem that from the name alone, we can establish that there was an ancient pagan connection. Also, other customs that came along during the history of Easter have additional pagan connections going off in a number of different directions, really. It's not just one particular cultural custom, but customs that flow together, I guess you could say, as if streams flowing into one river, that river being Easter. And of course, there is the connection originally with the Passover festival itself, the Hebrew Passover festival. But obviously, in adopting the name Easter and in adopting some of the other customs, the historic Christian church moved away from that original celebration and even moved the date of that celebration.
Paul confirms, "For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also he took the cup, when he had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye, as oft as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come."
Well, in the 2nd century, a bishop of Smyrna named Polycarp, he was a very elderly man, very well respected within historic Christendom, noted that the Eastern Church continued the practice of the apostles of observing the Paschal Feast on the 14th of Nisan. It coincided with the Jewish Passover. And on an occasion when he was visiting Rome, whether it was precisely for the purpose of contending with the Bishop of Rome, whose name was Anicetus, or not, we're not certain. He was there in Rome, and he did present this case concerning the observance of the Paschal Feast, and he continued to call it Passover at this point. In fact, in the Eastern Church, they called it Passover for many, many years, and some still do to this very day. So the Bishop of Smyrna, Polycarp, contended with the Bishop of Rome, Anicetus, and he said that this should be the standard for the entire church. Now, why would he make such a statement as that? The reason is that Anicetus and probably his predecessors had already moved the date of the Paschal Feast to another time. They were observing it now on a Sunday. It was always on a Sunday, whereas the Passover could fall on any day of the week. But this particular observance, this Paschal Feast in the Western Church, was now observed on a Sunday, and it was always on the first Sunday following the full moon that was after the vernal equinox.
"For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread."
An interesting aspect here, and also possibly relates to the pagan connections with the celebration of Easter and why it was settled, why they settled on a particular Sunday, has to do with sun worship itself. It was Emperor Constantine, remember, who decreed that the whole empire would shut down basically on Sunday as the Lord's Day, it was called, as it was called by the Christians. This is perhaps connected with the practice of observing Easter Sunday. Now, probably the earliest proponents of Easter Sunday, or I don't even know that Easter was used very early on, but the earliest proponents, the bishops in the West, probably didn't make the connection. But later on, as these motifs come together, you see how a connection could easily be established. By that I mean this. In the Bible, we find the sun and the light motif, for example,